In this video, we have breaking news, gargantuan news in regards to the Reedy Creek over there in Florida. Everyone, this changes the game. If this happens, it changes the game. We had to get on camera and talk about this. I brought Dre with me to discuss it up next. Welcome aboard to another episode of OG 55. I brought my collaborator, good friend, colleague, producer, Dre, on the channel with me today to talk about this Reedy Creek drama over in Florida. We have a lot to dive into. Dre, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. Woke up, everything was fine, and then it was like, uh-oh. Gotta call out my buddy OG. We gotta do a video. We got to do a video. So, OG was gracious enough to lend us his time for this. This is gonna be a pretty big video. We'll dispense with the pleasantries very quickly. At Vashsky right there, that's where you can find me. And if you want to see me, I'm gonna be on the channel you're watching right now, Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the grove. So that's where you can find me. Let's get into it.
Yes. All right, let's dive in. So, Dre, if we can kind of set the table a little bit. Not everyone is familiar with what Reedy Creek is. You know, if you're not a Floridian, or you're not really well versed in Walt Disney World, it might be a little confusing. If you can kind of set the table a little bit as to what we're dealing with here, and we'll go from there.
Well, we got to start with the history. So, when Walt had the idea for Epcot, right, the experimental community of tomorrow, not the park, but the community, he set his eyes on a huge parcel of land out in Florida. As we all know, started some companies who were separated from Disney, right, to buy up all those parcels, and then it was announced that Project X was actually coming to a reality, that Disney was going to be investing into Florida. But the Disney World project, as it was then known, was really about Epcot. Epcot was the big thing. Walt was far less interested in the theme park aspect of it. Obviously, there were some obligations there, but it was more about, hey, the community is where really the big thing here, right? This is why we're out here and investing in Florida in the way we are, and it was really a deal, this 1967 Reedy Creek Improvement Act that we're discussing right here, was really bore out of Walt's desire to do Epcot. And it was a deal that was done with, made by Walt. And it was only a deal that Walt could actually do. As Epcot's development was going along, it was clear that they would need far more control of their parcels of land out in Florida than any corporate involvement in any landholding would otherwise get. They essentially need to be their own municipality, their own kind of county government, in order to provide for, resources, so water, transportation, garbage, all those necessary services that a community provides, right? But also, they required maybe their own ability to provide for their own building permits, and there's a number of things that go along with that distinction. But it was clear that, or at least in Walt Disney's opinion, that he would need that level of control. And so the legislature at the time worked with Disney, then Disney Company, in order to facilitate that. And what that allows for Disney to do, and they've been enjoying and reaping the benefits from ever since, is just like it sounds. They are their own government. They are their own municipality in Florida. They pass their own construction permits. They pass their own licenses when it comes to like bars and restaurants and so forth. They inspect their own, they do inspections on their own projects. There are certain tax implications that go along with that. I mean, they have a stunning situation in Florida, and not a lot of people know about it. And honestly, when you look at it constitutionally, it really shouldn't exist. All things be fair. I mean, you can't set up a pseudo government type organizational structure in the United States. It's just not a thing. But Disney has enjoyed that privilege, and now it might be in question.
Right. And it's in question because I guess from what I understand, the Florida legislature is threatening to repeal this because of Disney's stance on the Florida bill. Is that correct?
Right. So a legislator in Florida named Spencer Roach tweeting on Twitter saying, yesterday was the second meeting in a week with fellow legislators to discuss a repeal of the 1967 Reedy Creek Improvement Act, which allows Disney to act as its own government. If Disney wants to embrace, this is his words, not mine, woke ideology, it seems fitting that they should be regulated by Orange County. That's a huge escalation right there. That has massive implications, not just for Disney, but for Florida itself.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. And this really puts Walt Disney World. Look, the attractive part from Disney's end about Florida is that they have that freedom to kind of do what they want. They have the Reedy Creek, they have the authority to sort of, like you said, to kind of, it's their own municipality. Like they can do what they want. There's not a lot of red tape involved, right?
Yeah, almost none.
There's none, exactly.
Yeah.
Compared to Anaheim, which is like pulling teeth to do fucking anything, you know?
Oh my gosh. It's not even a comparison. Not even a comparison.
There's no comparison, right? Mm-hmm. There's no comparison. But now that changes because let's just say if it happens, we don't know yet. It might not even happen. But if it does happen where they're stripped of this and they have to answer to local government, whatever, you know, then they're kind of in the same boat as the Disneyland Resort now. They're sort of at the mercy of county and local officials to get things approved and stuff. That changes things a lot. Now, what do you think, Dre? What are the ramifications for something like that for Walt Disney World Resort?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, just think of the economic studies that go into any project when it comes to either Walt Disney World Resort or Disneyland Resort or even Disneyland Paris for that matter. The company looks at it and goes, how much is our economic investment? That includes taxes, that includes construction costs, you know, the manning of certain attractions by staff and cast members and stuff like that. They do an economic study, right? And they see, okay, if we invest this much, how much will we get back? Ideally, they're looking at, okay, a return on investment should be at most 10 years, ideally less than 5 years, right? Well, that whole changes when you have to go through the regulatory systems set up and established by this, you know, by the two counties. So I believe it's Kissimmee and Orange County. Is that correct? It kind of straddles both.
So. I believe so.
Well, now you have to go by those county regulations, and then you have to go by the regulations as established in Florida. This is significant. That economic study just doesn't, you know, it doesn't quite the same math doesn't apply necessarily without this in place. And yes, you're right. I mean, it does kind of equalize the footing. I wouldn't say it's completely equal, only because I think the economic capitalization that Walt Disney World provides via their like huge hotel base and so forth, it's a little different still. And I would say that California is still there's more regulations out in California than there is in Florida. But it does kind of equal that playing field quite substantially, quite a bit. And honestly, I mean, these are things that the competitors of Walt Disney World, like Universal Studios Florida or SeaWorld, you know, Busch Gardens, all that, they don't have to contend with that. They don't have. They don't have the same freedoms as provided by this Reedy Creek Improvement Act. I mean, that's the problem. So competitively, I mean, it does put them more in line with their competitors in the same state. I mean, this is a big deal here.
No, it's a huge deal. Now, I would argue it could also kind of hurt the competitors a little bit in a way too, in kind of an indirect way. If they're going to start adding more red tape to Walt Disney World, it decreases the incentive. It de-incentivizes Disney to invest in Walt Disney World. They're never going to completely abandon Walt Disney World. I'm not saying that. They're never going to be like, oh, we're done,
Yeah.
But there is a point where it's like, okay, well, we don't have the freedom. There's not as much of a incentive now to invest maybe as much as we did in the past. When you start to back off on those investments, look, the reality of the situation is most people go to Central Florida for Disney World. And what they'll do is they'll tack on a few days to go to Universal then.
Right.
These parks don't live in a bubble. They have a symbiotic kind of relationship. So Universal definitely does benefit from Disney World being there.
Yeah.
And if Disney World is not investing, if Disney's not investing as much in Disney World, you're going to have an effect on the competition because now you don't have as many people coming in, which doesn't spill over into Universal and SeaWorld and various parks. I don't know. That's interesting. What do you think, though, Dre, in terms of that?
In the short term, maybe. It's hard to say because, I mean, Universal didn't stop investing in their parks, even though Walt Disney World did. During the events of 2020 and beyond. And let's be honest here, Florida is not the same state it was even a couple of years ago. We have Silicon Valley moving out, huge facilities out in Florida. We have, headquarters for multiple industries relocating themselves to Florida. We have a huge economic investment. Lake Nona, the whole thing about Lake Nona is Disney's involvement was only a small sliver. There's investment from capital firms and all kinds of stuff from all over the world investing in Lake Nona. Disney was only going to play a small part in that, but the reason what they chose that was because it was going to be a new stomping ground for all these industries, for all these industry leaders. I think the legislatures in Florida knew that and understood that the dynamic was changing. And it's like, hey, you know what? You're top dog now. But we don't necessarily have to rely on you as much as we necessarily would have maybe even 5-10 years ago. And so that dynamic has changed. And when Chapek came out and said, hey, I'm stopping all campaign contributions effective immediately, we're going to reassess and we're going to only donate our political contributions towards causes or politicians that align with us. Well, all of these other politicians were like, well, if you're going to take my money, maybe I should look at taking yours. I mean, that's kind of where we're at here. I understand that there are economic implications for Florida, that this isn't necessarily gravy. At the same time, I mean, imagine the tax benefit that would come, or at least that's how some people might spin it as, hey, if we regulate them, here's what we can get back from them. I mean, it's very, very complicated, and it's escalating to a point that's getting serious here.
Yeah, and here's the issue too with when it comes to Florida. Like you said, a lot of companies are moving to Florida because there's a lot it's business friendly, right?
Yeah,
it's a big reason why you mentioned Disney is moving to Lake Nona. Florida though can't be too complacent in that and just kind of because the reason why they're moving to Florida is because it's more business friendly. But now if you're going to be like, you know what, F Disney, we're gonna give them more red tape now. See that then you're kind of becoming not totally, but you're sort of doing then what California's doing. That's why they're moving out of California.
Partially, but this only affects Disney. See, that's the other thing. It doesn't affect these other corporations or corporate entities. Now, it does send a signal. There's no question about that. But, I mean, if I'm Comcast, if I'm SeaWorld, I'm jumping at this because now they're at the same. They're operating at the same competitive level as you are. I mean, that's kind of like it's a back and forth. It's tug and pull, obviously, but. I mean, if I'm Comcast and Comcast is looking to be top dog, well, here's a huge boon to their business. At least I believe. Now, obviously, people come down to Disney primarily at this point, as we know, and maybe they share vacations at Universal. but Comcast is attempting to position itself as that leading brand, as that leading destination resort type entity in Florida. I don't know. I can't see how they're like, maybe let the mouse have its anti-competitive practices in Florida. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that means happening. I think they're going to be pushing this.
Well, and from what I understand, and I heard this from our friend Aliyah, who is very well versed and schooled in all the corporate politics.
Yes.
She's saying like Bob Iger and Comcast CEO Brian Roberts do not have a good relationship. Now, I know Bob Iger is no longer with the company. I understand that.
They really don't. They really do not.
Yeah, they don't have a good relationship. And so, but that animosity doesn't just go away when Iger retires, right? So that's a factor, I mean, they're not cool. They're not cool. Like,
I believe his name is Roberts, correct?
Brian Roberts, correct.
Brian, okay. I could tell he's super competitive.
Oh, yeah.
He is a part of what he's doing is just to stick it to the mouse house. I mean, that's kind of how how deep those wounds are, kind of thing. I mean, it's crazy. So I think if he's looking at this, I mean, I can't understate or overstate, I should say, just how much they might be salivating over this opportunity and how this would really change the dynamic out in Florida. I mean, it really, really would, and it just didn't need to get to this point. That's the most frustrating part. It's like, what are you doing? Like, I mean, Disney. Go ahead.
Well, no, go ahead. Finish your point, and I'm going to bring something up. Go ahead.
No, I mean, Disney decided to get into, I don't know, oh God, I didn't do that correctly. Contest with Florida, and it's like why with Florida politicians? It's like what are you doing? You are entering waters that you are ill prepared to deal with the waves. I mean, it's. I think once they said we're going to actively repeal this, that we're going to invest in other types of legislation, that they're going to fight this out in the courts, you're now challenging their power. And so it's like, what other choice do they have? You already taken their campaign donations, so they have no allegiance to you whatsoever. Right. And they're going to be looking at their constituency, and I'll bring it up a little bit later after your point, but. As it'll show, I mean, people. There's a significant segment of the Floridian population who's supportive of this bill. But go ahead, OG. What do you have to say?
Yeah, I mean, this was and I know a lot of fans don't want to hear this, but to be fair, this was Chapek's initial fear of getting involved in this.
Yes,
he didn't want to get into the mud with Florida, with the Florida politics because of this very possible look. Once you go down that rabbit hole, this is what happens. And a friend of the channel who we've had on the channel, who I absolutely do adore, Jay Lynn. I'm gonna bring up a tweet.
Oh, please bring up his tweet because I love it.
This is great. And Jay Lynn hit the nail on the head with this. He says, "Look, Chapek ain't my favorite dude at all. But y'all press this man to stand up and do something. He did. Now DeSantis is clapping back, and you mad at Chapek. The hell did you expect? You already know how DeSantis is. You wanted them to fight. This is what comes with it." And he's responding to Belle, who actually I adore Belle. She's awesome. I adore both of them, and they're both great. But I gotta agree with Jay Lynn on this. I mean, he's right. Like, this is why Chapek didn't want to get involved. People pressured him to get involved and to get into that fight. He's in that fight now. And now people are trying to say, oh, well, look at Chapek. He fucked up. Well, what do you mean he fucked up? This is what everyone wanted him to do with the fight. Yes. This is the consequences of the fight.
Yes, it is. And people, unfortunately, I mean, there are people who are first step thinkers and then people who are second, third step thinkers. And I think when emotions run high, you might not initially think of the consequences of those actions, but you got to think second step. You got to think third step, because what do these politicians have the have the capability of doing to you in response to what you do to them. I mean, that's kind of the thing here. I mean, it's like Chapek's initial instincts in terms of maybe not picking sides and maybe not, maybe not making statements that can be used as political footballs, as we brought up on the show before. Maybe that was the correct one. And I'm not saying that they had to support this bill or anything, okay, that they had to be completely silent on it. You could have just done hey, this legislation doesn't directly impact the company. Not to say that it might not have implications for the company down the road, or there might not be any unforeseen consequences, but it doesn't directly implicate the Disney company. We stand by our LGBTQ plus cast members, our employees, right? We will support them. We will donate to charities that support them, and we'll be keeping an eye on where this legislation goes and what the effects of these things have. But at this point right now, we have to really deal with things that directly implicate the company. And it could have been as simple as that. Now, would people still be upset? It's unavoidable, but that was the route that you could have taken. And even when the correction happened from the original stance to after the bill was actually, passed by the legislatures, the statements that Chapek made afterwards, you didn't have to correct to the point where you're dealing with politics directly. And that's where this thing has blown up. I mean, I'm seeing so many people talk about this, this constant back and forth between DeSantis and Chapek and so forth. I mean, this has now gone mainstream. This has become a much bigger issue than it was. And this specific issue, I mean, there are people who are politically inclined who are going to salivate at this, who are going to bring this up. And that has huge implications too, because like I said, when we started this whole thing, this might have not been constitutional. This might have not been okay to even do in the first place. And look, the legislatures throughout the decades, and even the judiciary, they just look the other way. Now, sometimes that's because, well, Disney may have donated to certain organizations and certain people to look the other way, right? But they look the other way, and now they place a target on themselves. It's unbelievably unnecessary. And I understand there's some talk about, well, this is, nothing's really going to come out of this. DeSantis and Chapek, they're not really at odds, between each other. They're just trying to, placate their respective bases, right? This threat right here didn't come from DeSantis' office. It came from the legislatures. And I just want to put up this real fast, this polling here. This is, from Political Morning Consult. The people, I forgot, I believe these are Floridians who are asked this, but the majority of people support this legislation. As controversial as it might be, they support it. And I think if you're a politician in Florida and you're saying, well, they're not going to donate to me, right? And they're not going to support me, well, then I'm going to get the support of my constituency by waging this war and waging this fight. They have an incentive to do that. That might not be aligned with, whatever backdoor dealing that people might think is going on between DeSantis and Chapek. Right. And even if that's the case, it could still escalate. It could still escalate beyond this, and it could still get out of hand real quick.
Yeah.
And I just...
And this is why, Dre, this is why Chapek did not want to go down this rabbit hole in the beginning. It's not that he's anti-LGBTQ. Like, he doesn't hate. I don't believe that Bob Chapek is a hateful person in that regard. I really don't believe that. Okay. No. I think he was really just looking at like, what do you say? The tea leaves, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just, he knew that, like, if we do this, we're going to go down it's a slippery slope. And this is what occurs when she's starting to go down that road.
Yeah.
And then Chapek decided he's going to go down that road, and whether you can hate the legislation, you can disagree with it. And I totally respect that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But like from Disney's perspective, though, this was a huge risk for them to do this. And like Jay Lynn mentioned in his tweet,
it exposed them.
When you go to war with local government, like they're going to fight back, and you're going to have to deal with shit like this. This is something that, like, come on, like they you can't just expect them to just sit back and just take it,
And this is only coming off a couple of years where these political impasses with politicians can cost you big money, as we learned with California and Gavin Newsom. Yeah. Right? I mean, you could have shaved off maybe 100, maybe 200 days if they could have come to some equitable agreement. And it was only when Disney started playing ball a little bit that some of those things got rolled back, and obviously the park opened up and stuff like that. You're wading into waters that are just, I mean, you're ill-equipped to deal with. It exposes you to your vulnerabilities, and this is exactly that. I mean, now you have a spotlight on you, and now they're coming for you, and they want blood, because I think these politicians feel that their power is being challenged by this what they consider to be a greedy corporation, and who they have had disagreements before in the past. There were some threads going on about, hey, Disney's kind of, wholesale selling their rooms at rates that gets, it's kind of a tax loophole situation to avoid paying the tax of how much they actually, price their rooms for and so forth. I mean, there's a lot of different things that Disney's done in Florida that these politicians could necessarily pounce on. And that is what they're going to do right here. And it's I've never been more frustrated. I've never been more frustrated because it just didn't need to get here.
It's incredibly frustrating. Now, our good friend George, Disney Family Man 23, Mr. Balls to the Wall, he couldn't be with us today, but he sent me a text message. He really wanted to be here, but he sent us a text message actually, and he said that since I'm not going to be there, can you at least give a statement from Mr. Family Man?
Okay.
So he said, at least can you quote me on the show? I said, absolutely, George. He says right here, quote, if Florida passes this bill over Walt Disney World after 55 years, it will be history in the making, but not in a good way. He's right. Yeah. George is absolutely right. It's history in the making for sure. This is history in the making, both for the country, but also for Disney, and just, it changes everything. It changes the whole kit and caboodle, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. It really does. And unfortunately, because of the largely bifurcated leadership that the company has been dealing with between Iger and Chapek, it's like you couldn't deal with California, now you can't deal with Florida. It's like, you can't deal with anybody. Maybe it's you. It's like,
right,
kind of one of those deals, right? I mean, it would be significant. Listen, I just think the company's arrogant. I'm sorry. I gotta say it. I mean, I think Disney's in a headspace where they feel they can do no wrong, and and we've kind of alluded to this over the previous shows, right? Where it's like, hey, let's not treat the guests like this. Let's not what is it? Raise the parking fees when you're not providing tram service at the Disneyland Resort. Like, that's not great. That's not great service. We've talked about other instances in which, great customer service that we've come to expect from Disney maybe is not present. Maybe they're not, treating their DVC members well, or maybe their annual pass holders / Magic Key holders well, right? We've talked about that before. Genie Plus is hugely divisive. I mean, we had a multi-thread conversation about that on Twitter with some of our Diz Twitter friends on there, going back and forth over it. I mean, I think Disney's at a place where it's like, we can do no wrong. The brand is so strong, we can pretty much do anything. And now they're shifting their weight around, kind of believing themselves in that way. and saying, "Oh, we can get into the political realm too. We can do this. We can do that." And it's like, that's now that's not great. And a lot of people from across political spectrums have kind of just turned their backs on Disney. I've kind of just said,
Right.
you know what, this ain't for me. And when you're losing that public support, both from fans, both from guests, both from consumers, and now just regular people out there on the street who may have thought of Disney differently before all this, it's just when you talk to high level senior executives at the Disney company, and you tell them that, hey, maybe things aren't so great. They just say stock price is as high as it can be. Well, guess what? They repeal this, I can guarantee you that stock price might look very, very different.
Yeah, it will, absolutely, because that's Walt Disney World is really the bread. Well, yeah, it's the bread and butter of the theme park division, and right now the theme parks are the ones making the money. You know, and here's the thing too. I will play a little devil's advocate.
Sure. When
it comes to Disney, I do think they're in a unique position.
Yeah.
And I've said this before, and on many shows, many tweets. I've said it before. I do think they are kind of held to a different standard. Look, Universal's been able to fly under that radar. They didn't have to say shit. They don't have to say shit about anything. They can just skate by. SeaWorld, all of them, they can skate by. Disney doesn't really have that luxury. Everyone's gone in for Disney. And then you have all these creatives coming out, against it. Like all the Pixar, it's a big mutiny against Bob Chapek, and it's not an easy position to be in because Chapek is really fucked either way. If he just ignores it, like Comcast Universal did, well, then is he going to lose Pete Docter? Is he going to lose Kevin Feige then over that?
Right.
He can't just not do anything. But then if he does something, then he's like we've talked about, he's wading into the political waters. So it's a tough position to be in. And a lot of these other companies, Universal, SeaWorld, even studios like Warner Brothers, they don't have this problem. Disney is very unique in this situation. They're held to a very high standard, and people really get on them for every little thing. Sometimes a little bit too much, in my opinion. But that's the thing, though. It's like, I don't know. Like if Universal was in the same boat where they had creatives threatening to leave, this big mutiny from all their various subsidiaries and all that, would Brian Roberts react differently? I don't really know if he would. It's a tough position to be in,
It is. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not. And look, I believe you you've made the statement on Twitter. Hey, Disney's just far more culturally relevant than Comcast, and yeah, look, I would totally agree. I mean. And they've had conversations internally about this going on for decades. I remember back in Michael Eisner's time, they were like, "Hey, you know what? We have theme parks, we have, hotels, we're all in this. Hey, how about we get our own airline? How about we do it?" And it was like, no, because all it takes is one of our planes to go down with a big Mickey on it in some field somewhere, and it's like that's gonna be hell, right? That could be a PR disaster. But they even understood, to your credit, like, hey, if we do something, that might have different implications compared to if somebody else does something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's kind of a thing, and that's kind of a reality. My feeling though is that you gotta tread carefully with this because you deal with children's entertainment, and this was really a bill aimed at the curriculum of children, right? And it's complicated because unfortunately Bob Iger kind of set them on this path where they do become a little bit more politically active than maybe they had been in prior years, right? And so when people come in with that expectation that they be politically active, and maybe it's something that maybe isn't in their best interest to be politically active on, well, that's going to be a tough situation. And there's a lot of ways to screw it up. I'm just saying, you couldn't have screwed it up this bad if you tried. Because now you just pissed everybody off.
You pissed everybody off. I 1000% agree with that. And like that's the thing too, is like this is where you really want someone like a Bob Iger.
Yeah.
Because look, Bob Iger's not perfect. I mean, like you said, he kind of got us into the mess in the first place, you know?
Yes, he did.
But at least Bob Iger, see, this is the thing with Chapek. He doesn't have the social intelligence to kind of to kind of navigate these waters. He doesn't have the public relations mindset to navigate any of this. And it's very reactionary, you know, and it's very, and that's a big problem. And I would say it many times. If Chapek was running any other company, if he was running Coca-Cola, if he was running, I don't know, some insurance company, or if he was running Pepsi Cola or some other, it
Gap?
wouldn't be a problem. But Disney's a different animal.
Oh.
Or what was that?
No, it was The Gap.
The Gap.
Paul Presser. Okay, all right.
Shout out to Paul Presser.
Sorry, I don't mean to step on your point. You were exactly 100% OG. I mean, you're spot on. If he was running any other company, if it was in any other position, maybe this wouldn't fall on his shoulders. But I mean, you're Disney. You're one of the biggest entertainment conglomerates in the world. I mean, you have an empire, and people, I mean, you deal with family entertainment. I mean, you're placed on a pedestal that no other company really is.
Right.
And maybe Disney has had some slick salesmen for a reason. Walt was the guy to broker this kind of deal, and he's the only guy that could have. There's no other person in probably the entire world who could have brokered this deal in any state in the union, but he did, right? That was a unique thing about Walt Disney, is that people believed in his vision and people trusted him. And that's why they were granted this 1967 Reedy Creek Improvement Act. Yeah. But now that has completely changed, and they have ostracized people who may have otherwise been in their corner and who would have otherwise headed this off at the pass. And now there's momentum against them coming from a multitude of sides. And unfortunately, that's going to have damaging implications, maybe for Florida, maybe for the company. I mean, it's right.
And maybe this Reedy Creek thing is because, like you mentioned earlier in the show, when you set the table for us about what this whole thing is, it was really, Reedy Creek was really set up because of the mindset of Epcot being a living, breathing city, where people would live and work. So Walt wanted to have that control over his city. We never got that city, though. We never got the city. It's a theme park.
Yes.
So maybe this whole notion of and just being fair here, maybe this whole notion of this kind of autonomy is an outdated one because there's no city to fucking run. It's a theme park.
and people have said that very same thing, OG, for years. Anybody who knows anything about this has said, well, wait a minute, we never got the theme park. And I'm sorry, Disney has the ability to set up its own nuclear power plant. We don't even afford that to countries, much less Disney. This is insane. But it's yes, they can do this. They have this ability. They have this unique power. And it's a lot of people, a lot of detractors, a lot of politicians, a lot of people over the years have said, we never got the theme park.
Right.
Maybe we should take a second look at this. And now, unfortunately, you've now thrown it that way. I mean, it just takes one politician to start up one lawsuit and have some court say, ooh, this is unconstitutional. And then what?
And this is why Chapek didn't want to get involved. And everyone was like, no, we got to get involved. And I'm not saying you have to support the legislation or whatever. I'm not even taking a side on that. I'm just saying, at least understand the man's perspective initially as to why he didn't want to get involved. This is the reason why. Once you poke the beehive, it's a lot hard to walk it back. And now we're seeing that. Oh, why is DeSantis doing this? Well, you went to war with him, and now he's going to retaliate. Or as Jay Lynn says, he's going to clap back. What do you expect? Fandom?
You went after the politicians' pocketbooks. You challenged their power. You said that you were going to take this to the court, so now you're using another branch of government against them. You directly attacked the governor, the other branch of government, right? You just...
Right.
I mean, what were you thinking? I mean, of course there was going to be fallout from those kinds of actions. And look, I don't know if you noticed, but you only have two real big entities. Yes, they have land holdings in various other places around the country. I'm not saying they don't, but really, your two economic drivers domestically is either California or Florida. And you screwed up both. Come on, Disney. What are we doing?
No, yeah, you did.
Wait a minute.
You
Wait,
did. They've had decades worth of drama with California. We've been very critical in regards to California because.
But it begs the damn question: what the hell's going on?
There you go.
Exactly. From Newsom's mouth, exactly.
Yep.
You know, like California was a total shit show. And we would always point to like, oh, well, Florida's more pro-business and what have you. And now Disney's having an issue with even Florida. And Florida, the stakes are even higher because Florida, that's their flagship resort. That's their flagship resort that they have there in Florida.
Yeah.
And now it's potentially, you know, it's going to be tied up with all kinds of stuff because I don't know. It's crazy.
They have tens of thousands of rooms that they have to fill. They had to continue somewhat of an investment in Florida just to keep those rooms occupied, if nothing else. I don't think even with if they repeal this, I don't even think they don't stop their investment, but it definitely does shake them up, and it definitely does change the dynamic of what what future investment in Florida looks like. And it's like it's
we've made mistakes. I have made mistakes.
It's one of those. This was completely unavoidable. Didn't need to happen. Now it's happening. Now there's real momentum here, and I hope that all sides can come to some agreement and some some kind of I don't know, middle ground where all sides are maybe a little bit more placated more than they are now. But I don't know. I don't think Chapek's that guy. It might not be possible.
No, I think you're right. I'm on the same page with you, Dre. I think, and look, and I've said this before, you can go back on videos I've made about Chapek. We've made about Chapek. We've been very fair to Chapek, but I think he's coming, if he's not already there, to the point of no return. I mean, is it possible that he can kind of change course and become the guy that we need? And I don't know if he can. I think it might be a little bit too late at this point. I think at this point, it's almost like they need a new CEO. They need a reboot, start over. I'm getting to the point now where I don't even know if no matter what he does is going to be enough. Once you've broken that trust with talent, you've broken the trust with governments, you've broken that trust with all these entities that you do business with. It's really hard to build that back and get back into the swing of things. And I just don't know if he can do it. You might have to reboot with a new CEO and just say, hey, look, you know what? We have a new sheriff in town, and we're going to jumpstart talks again. You just might have to do that because I think it's getting to the point now where it's almost too late.
Yeah, I mean, outside of a major gesture, like maybe like what we speculated on previous shows, maybe altering the Lake Nona plan or so forth. Maybe outside of those big things, I just don't think this is. I think you're right. I think we're at a point of no return here, and he's the mud monster now. It's like he's never going to get it off, and no. I mean, they're hemorrhaging talent at the creative ranks in multiple areas. We've heard Imagineering, obviously, from the Lake Nona move. That's still a contentious issue right now, by the way. You're now upsetting your consumer base, not just in Florida, but generally across the entire nation with some of these moves that they've been making within the last few weeks. You're now at odds with politicians on both coasts. I mean, it's
crazy.
I don't know what you do.
I don't know how he survives it. I mean, I'm talking in terms of career. I don't know how he survives it. I really don't. And Hollywood Reporter dropped an article today, actually.
I saw that.
About this. Like, a lot of people just think that Chapek is sort of like on borrowed time at the company. Like, and there's talks of bringing Tom Staggs back. And there's talks of Peter Rice and all this stuff. And I'm like, look, and here's my thing on it. And I know we're coming out on a hard stop, but here's my thing on the Chapek thing. I see a lot of stuff, and I see like even from I love John Campea, right? I love John Campea. I watch
here
it
we go. I got it right here. I got it right here. Hang on.
God, I sound like a Bob Iger dick rider.
There you go.
Love John Campea, but even him, he kind of falls prey to this where it's like he hates Chapek. He criticizes him every day, says he's a disaster, this, that, and the other, but give him 3 years. And I'm like, and I see this kind of the same narrative with a lot of the Hollywood trades. Oh, Chapek is the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
But give him time.
Yeah.
And I got to push back on that. I got to, and I, like I said, I'm fair to Chapek, but if this guy is the disaster that everyone says he is, why are we going to give him more time? So he can do irreversible damage to the company? No. I don't care. Get him out now. Get him out now. Well, yes, the stock price will take a short-term hit, but long-term, it's for the best. Sometimes you got to rip the Band-Aid off, you know? And if he's not working out, if you know he doesn't have the chops, why are we going to give him more time? So we can totally fuck up the company? I just don't get it, you know?
Well, and that's why I bring up those high-level executives, because when you call out problems, when you look at, hey, these are red flags, might want to step back here. Oh, we're going to have guest attrition. You know, I mean, we're lighting our goodwill on fire every single day. Just look at the stock price. Stock price is high. And I'm sure there are people making that argument right now. Oh, keep Chapek right now. Stock price is high. It's like, maybe the company does need to have a failure.
Yep.
In order to stave off a huge, irreparable failure that breaks the entire company. Maybe that needs to happen. I don't know. But it's sad times.
And we talked about that earlier, and you made a good point. We in the DMs, like you, and I was like, "Wow, Dre has a good point with that." Sometimes you got to hit rock bottom, before you get help. You know, and that goes with like personal, like even people. Like sometimes you got to hit that rock bottom before you realize you have a problem, and get out of it. And that also applies to companies. Sometimes you got to hit rock bottom to realize, hey, we have a problem. And that's when you start to climb out. So it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. It's a scary time as a Disney fan. I gotta be real with you because we've been through this, before, with Disney and, the mid 80s, it was real tumultuous. We had the 2005 Save Disney thing and we're kind of getting into that same mode now. It's a scary time to be a Disney fan. I just hope that they come out of it like they always do, knock on wood, and we'll see. We'll see.
But hey, you know what, brother? Thank you for having me on. This was like I said, I was itching to do this one. This one was a pretty good one. So I'll sign myself out here. It's going to be at Vashsky right there. That is where you can find me on Twitter. Love the conversations, especially right now. It's a very interesting time to have them. And, to see me, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at OrangeGo55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. So that is where you can find me.
Yes. Dre, I want to thank you as always, brother. I love having you on the show. I love what you bring to the show, the dynamic. Just fantastic stuff, man. And it was funny I was driving actually when you called me.
Oh,
but I was like, before I even heard your voicemail, right? I was like, I gotta text this guy. We gotta get on camera and talk about Reedy Creek. We got to, it was like, we gotta talk about it. So we were all like on the same level with that. This was huge news. And I do want to say to our audience, excuse me, that we will be trying to do like a longer form show with Disney Family Man, because he's the Florida guy. So we want to have the three of us on and kind of do a long form show. I know this is only like an hour, but want to get him on maybe later this week and really, really dive in even more so with this Reedy Creek stuff, because there's a lot to chew on. So that'd be fun,
Yeah, I agree. It's a lot to chew on, and we've only scratched the surface on the overall implication of this. This is fascinating. So I agree with you.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for watching. Comment down below. What do you think? Look, there are huge. This is a very complex situation. There's a lot of ramifications that are involved with this, with Disney, state of Florida, even California. what this means for state economies, everything. This is massive. Like, we cannot understate how big this is. This is massive. This changes the game. If it goes through, if it happens, we'll see. I got to tell you, Chapek is sweating. He is sweating right now.
The fact they're even talking about it, I mean, this was an unmentionable 2 years ago. So
unbelievable. Unbelievable. Comment down below, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day.